Welcome to the Phil Steele Plus Tour with selections. Up for you today, I've got 5 selections, 6 quick hitters, and even a rare NFL play. Before I get to the starting matchup here, Kansas and Missouri, a quick bit of housekeeping. Last week, 1 and 2 for the selections, 1 and 1 for the quick hitters, a nice under with the Texas-Ohio State under. Tough loss with the Akron. Akron down 3-0, was intercepted in the end zone and then gave up a late touchdown. Did not get the cover against Wyoming. That 1 and 2 record brings the selections to this record's combined tour selections now over 2 years, 71 and 49. And the NFL plays only 11 the last 22 weeks, but we are starting with an NFL play this week, 6, 5, and 1 for those. All right, so let's get to your first matchup. And we take a look at Kansas against Missouri. It's great to see this rivalry renewed. When you take a look at this, used to be a heated rivalry, probably the top rivalry for both schools, even though Kansas plays Kansas State. Let's go take a look at the history. Now, when you go here on the schedule, you see these words in blue. And once again, the purpose of the Phil Steele Plus Tour is to show you how to use Phil Steele Plus to its fullest. But when you see these words over here and you click on them, that gives you the last 28 years action in the series. So you see they have not met since 2011, but the dog is 10-5 ATS, and this is why I'm calling this the rivalry dog plus some. And if you look over here, this is upsets. And you can see in the last 13 meetings, 8 outright upsets. So upsets are predominant. This is one. And look at these 3 years, 09, 10, and 11. That's when Kansas was really bad. That's why the line, like these two lines were 24.5, 25.5. When the lines were close, that's when these upsets were happening, not when they were a huge underdog. Remember, Kansas is a lot better than they used to be. So let's keep that in mind. That's part of it. That's one of the main reasons this one's in your tour today is the rivalry dog factor, but there's more. If you go to the schedule with numbers, and by the way, schedule with numbers, let me show you how to get there. You go to your Phil Steele Plus menu, which is right here, and you've got FBS information, FCS information, NFL information. The schedule predictor is right here. And when you click there, it gives you this. It tells you all about what each of the categories is about. But then you click right here, and it takes you right to the schedule predictor for the week. We'll move that back to Kansas now. There we go. Put Kansas up top. And I've got the abridged version here of the schedule predictor. And what we have here, we take a look. This gives you what the Vegas line is. Actually, the line's 7 right now. I should have corrected that. That gives you what the power ratings predicted by, the average game grade, what my preseason number was on the game, which was 3, which would be a slant on Kansas. Action Network, FPI, if they've met in the last bunch of years, as we just showed, they haven't met since 2011. And then this is the angles. And how the angles section works out here is it says Kansas is the play. It's green, so it's a best bet. And all the greens are best bets. Now, you have to pay attention because, like here, this is a best bet on Navy, but that's a best bet on UAB, and that's a best bet on UAB, and that's a best bet on UAB. And that's why UAB is a 2. Even though there's 3 on UAB, the Navy crosses one of them off, if you get my drift. That's how it works. To be a green best bet out here, you have to have at least 3 of these going for you, like those do, and we'll get more into that later. But Kansas has the series going for them. They've got the fact that Missouri's not great as a home favorite, and then the ranking thing. And if we take a look at Kansas, now, keep in mind, Missouri's almost ranked, but this feels like a ranked game for them. I just want to show you how Kansas does in big games. Take a look at last year. They only faced 3 ranked foes. They almost beat Kansas State, easily covered. They upset Iowa State. They upset BYU. They upset Colorado. So that's 4-0. Here, they played Kansas State. They were plus 9.5. They only lost by 4. And here they played number 8 Oklahoma and pulled the outright upset. So 4 outright upsets their last 6 in big games against ranked teams. Once again, Missouri's 27. So I think Kansas will treat it like a ranked thing. And all those factors add up to the what I mentioned here, which is 3 angles going on Kansas. So that's what the green angles out here means. It shows you the team that it's for and then it shows you the different categories. If you want to get the individual records, like for the series, for the home favorite, for the rankings, use my Inside the Press Box. I have it all in the write-ups. And so if you're a Press Box user, you get Phil Steele Plus for free. That's what that refers to. Just go to your Press Box and look at Ohio's record as a home dog. Look at the record of West Virginia as a way favorite, and look at how Ohio does at home straight up. It's all in the Press Box write-up. So keep that in mind. But that is your first play here. We are going to take Kansas +7. And one other thing here I want to point out. Well, let's delve into this one a little bit closer. Look at how Kansas's defense has been playing this year. Now, last week, Fresno, let's see what Fresno did last week. Let's go over Fresno. And Fresno put up 527 yards on Georgia Southern, 351 yards on the ground. Look what they did against Kansas's D, only 37 yards, only 216 yards for the game. So Kansas played well there. Granted, Wagner's not a very good team, but holding them to 6 first downs, 143 yards, that's pretty good. So their defense is playing well. You got 2 good defenses in this matchup. But the other factor that would go in Kansas's favor is that with Missouri, they've got a first-time starting quarterback in Bo Pribula, who did well, but it was against Central Arkansas. And meanwhile, there's a veteran quarterback here for Kansas, and Jalen Daniels, who's hitting 80% with a 7-1 ratio this year. I got to love that. So we've got the more veteran quarterback as well. Add it all up, the rivalry dog plus some, we're going to take Kansas +7 over Missouri. By the way, the schedule predictor will be updated daily with the latest lines. I'll have those lines updated for you. And by the way, we are just trying to get everything caught up on the thing. Todd's overwhelmed a little bit here, so our half times are not all in yet. Our boxes are not all in yet, but they will be. And by the time we do this tour next week, all the boxes will be in, all the half times will be in, everything will be up to date. But all your individual stats are up right now. The half times are coming, the box scores will be coming, and all your 28-year matchups are available for you right now as well. All right, let's go to this next one, and it's my misleading final game of the week. Now, for this one, we're going to put Kennesaw State on the left, and we are going to put Indiana on the right. So let's go over here to Indiana, and there's Kennesaw State. Now, last week, Indiana only beat Old Dominion 27-14. That's not a very good game, right? Well, first of all, Old Dominion's a really good team. They're one of the best teams in the Sun Belt Conference. Kennesaw State does play in the CUSA, so they're a weaker team. And they did play a good game last week against Wake Forest. I thought they played Wake Forest even up, but they are still picked towards the bottom of CUSA. But the thing I want to point out is while Indiana did not cover last week, let's go take a look a little bit closer. Now, the box score right here is courtesy of collegepressbox.com. Thank you, collegepressbox.com, for allowing us to post the box scores here. And collegepressbox.com, very affordable. You get all this information at your fingertips there as well. But in this game, ODU got a 75-yard run for a touchdown on the first play. But the thing I want to show you, let's take a look at the drive chart, and you look at the fact that Indiana actually had 7 drives inside the 20-yard line. So Indiana drove down, and they got stopped on downs at the, where's it at, 1-yard line. They got stopped on downs. Then they drove down, and they fumbled at the 20. Then they drove down to the 4-yard line. They had first and goal once again, settled for a field goal. Finally got a touchdown. Then they went down and missed a field goal. Another touchdown. So in 7 drives in the red zone, 2 touchdowns. That's unusual for Indiana. And I want to show you another stat in a minute. Then they got down to the 7. They again settled for a field goal. They got down to the 8. They got stopped on downs. So all game, Indiana was inside the 20-yard line. Should easily have had something like 49 points and got the cover in that game against Old Dominion. They did not. And Coach Cignetti not happy about that. And a couple things about Coach Cignetti. Let's take a look at the last 10-year spread records here. These are in your magazine. The top records here are in your magazine. They're right here, about here. But these down here, you know, how do you do as a favorite at 20 or more? By the way, 4-0, double-digit favorite, 5-1 last year. Of course, he was great as a favorite, 10-1 last year as a favorite, and now 10-2. And the thing was, they poured on late. There's a couple games here where they're scoring late touchdowns to get covers, and I like that. So the thing you think of when a team struggles in the red zone like that is, well, if you can't run the football, you can't score. Look what the hell Indiana did on the ground. 309 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. They just couldn't push it in the end zone. I think that gives us some great line value. A very misleading final. They had 30 first downs to 10. It's a misleading final game of the week. We're going to take Indiana minus the 35.5. We're going to take Coach Cignetti, who's a great home favorite, who scores touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and we're going to call for Indiana to punch in and score on those drives and get back to their 10-1 record as a favorite last year. All right, let's take a look at your line value play of the week this week. And we're going to put Fresno State on the left, and we are going to put Oregon State on the right. And Oregon State's over here. Oregon State disappointed me last week, losing to Cal. I did use Oregon State in the press box last week. It was disappointed. But Malik Murphy wasn't bad, 63% 0-1. And Cal, probably an underrated team. I might have underrated them this year. And last year, at one point, they could have been 7-0. They just lost a lot of close games. Plus, they've got a VHT quarterback. Now, we pointed out how Fresno struggled against Kansas when they played them in a step down in competition at home. Now, last week at home, they actually trailed 14-13 at the half and then came in the big second half, played a lot better. But Oregon State's at home for this. The thing we're going to take a look at when I say line value, let's take a look at this schedule with numbers. We've got this game here. Oregon State is -3. Now, this current AGG is saying Fresno by 6. But look at this. My preseason number on the game was Oregon State -17. And generally, my preseason number pretty close to where the Vegas number would be on the game. So Oregon State would have been a big favorite. But they're off a loss like this. Fresno's off an impressive win like that. And so what happened is the line's only 3 when it should probably be 7 to 10 to 14 points. Oregon State does have the fact that the last time here they should be favored by 9. They won the game by 9. And if you add it all up, this is a line value play. My line value play is going to be Oregon State -3 over Fresno State. And keep in mind, first week of the tour, we used Kansas against Fresno and won that one 31-7. Remember, that was your lone tour play in week 1. And now we're going to go against Fresno again. So let's take Oregon State, a sneaky game here. And by the way, if you look at the records, and I should have pointed that one out when I was looking at it, here are the records over 3 years. Here's the records last week for the games. And we take a look at my preseason line, 80-47 whenever it's a best bet. Once again, this only counts best bets, which are the ones in green and bold. And when you look at the final records, if this remains in black, that means the game won. If it's red, that means the game lost. So we do update the records each and every week. So a nice 80-47 for these plays, and we're going to go with Oregon State -3 over Fresno. Now, I do have a special for you, but I want to point out, this one is only going to be available, and it's only for you guys, only you guys that take the tour, the only ones that get this special. But it's only available on Friday after 3 o'clock. That's when this will be updated. But College Press Box this week will have 82 games, every FBS game in there. That includes every FBS versus FCS game, and we got Chris working hard at those right now. He'll come up with some winners for us for Press Box. And they got off to a great start last week. Now, you'll also get NFL Week 1 is $20. So if you purchase Press Box separately, it's $20. NFL Week 1, it's $20. We are going to run a special this week on the store. You get both college and NFL for $35. So we're knocking $5 off the price if you get both. But I want to thank you for watching the tour. On Friday, enter the code TOURVIP. And you will click on this one here where you get college and pro for $35. I'll give you both issues for $15. Less than the college, less than the NFL. You get both for $15. That's $25 off the already discounted price. Now, once again, that'll be up Friday after 3. Put the $35 combo item in your cart. Then use the code TOURVIP at checkout, and you'll get both my college, 82 games at $20 value, NFL, 16 games, $20 value, $40 value, just $15 when you use Tour VIP. I really want to thank you guys for taking the tour with me. All right, let's get to our next game. Our fourth game is my schedule predictor game of the week. Let's take a look at this one. We're going to put West Virginia on the left, and we're going to put Ohio on the right. Now, West Virginia looked good last week against Robert Morris. In fact, if Todd had the halftimes up, you would see that they had almost 300 yards at the half in this game against Robert Morris, but only 10 points. They scored a bunch in the second half of that one. But, of course, Robert Morris is a different animal. I got to tell you, I was watching Ohio last week, and came away very impressed with Parker Navarro. He impressed me all last year, but really impressed me against Rutgers last week. But when I say schedule predictor game of the week, let's take a look at the schedule predictor, and let's see what they got going for them. Now, West Virginia is actually a 3.5-point favorite. Once again, I didn't update the lines last night. I should have. I will in the future update them prior to the tour, but West Virginia is 3.5 right now. But my plus-minus power rating says Ohio by 6.5. The current AGG, and that's this grade out here. And what this grade does, and I love this grade, by the way, this takes into account not only the final score of the game, but it takes into account the opponent, where the game was played, the yards rushing, yards passing, defensive rush, defensive pass. All of that's included. They graded out a 108.4 in a loss at Rutgers. West Virginia graded out a 108.4 in a 42-point win over Robert Morris. Once again, takes into account your opponent, where you played them. As you see here, Ohio outgained Rutgers 440 to 399. So if you take the 108 and 108, that's an even game. Add in the home field edge. And when you add in the home field edge, it comes up with Ohio. Let's get back over here by 3.5. So I've got, if you look in the magazine, I've got your different home field edges, and that's 3.5. Now the situation, Ohio's going to be fired up for this game at home. And if you look at last year, they lost to Kentucky. But the one thing I want to point out about the Kentucky game, let's go ahead here. And if you click here, you've got the individual player stats for each game. Look at Kentucky. Parker Navarro. They benched Parker Navarro. In fact, they sat their center. They sat their receiver. They were getting ready for MAC play is what they were doing last year. That's not going to be the case here. They think they have a shot at winning this game. Ohio's all fired up for it, and they're very tough at home. If we take a look at the last 10-year records, Ohio at home is 42-14. They rarely lose. In fact, they've only lost one home game the last 3 years. As a home dog, look at this. They've won their last 5 as a home underdog. So a lot of factors in that respect. And we go back to the schedule with numbers, and we'll close that up there. Go back to the schedule predictor, I should say. And we see that Ohio out here is good as a home dog. I just showed you that. Let's look at West Virginia as an away favorite, see how they do. Away favorite, 0-1, 0-3, 1-3, 1-5, 1-6 is an away favorite the last 5 years. So that's not very good. You've got a poor away favorite. So let's click back over here. You've got a poor away favorite. You've got a good home dog. You've got the home straight up record. And that's a 3-angle play on Ohio. So you got this one going for it. 1, 2, 3. There are 4 best bets working on Ohio this week. That's why it's a 4 best bet right here. Whenever it gets green out here, 76-49 for the best bets whenever they turn green. So you got to like that. Your schedule predictor play is to take Ohio plus 3.5 over West Virginia. Now let's take a look at your situational game of the week. And we are going to put Army against Kansas State. So let's get Army on your left. And they are in, of course, the American Army. And they're playing Kansas State on the right. I always like to do this with your matchups. It's the best thing to do with Phil Steele Plus. And I'm going to slide this back out a little bit there. There we go. All right, let's take a look at this one. Now, last week, Army led Tarleton State by 14 at one point. Ended up missing the game-winning field goal, missing a field goal in overtime. They didn't play bad. I liked what I saw to Dwayne Coleman. When he got banged up at times, Cale Helms came in. Helms is a bigger running back. Coleman's the more explosive one. If you go back to last year, Bryson Daly was like a fullback at quarterback. So I think Helms is more like Bryson Daly was. Coleman gives him more explosiveness. But they weren't bad. 280 yards rushing. Granted, Tarleton State. But here's the thing about Tarleton State. I want you to, if you have the FCS magazine, if you get the digital FCS magazine, you will just read the Tarleton State page. It'll tell you a little something about how underrated they are this year. By the way, to go to the store, the FBS, you go to the homepage, and at that point you go to the store, and you can get the FCS magazine, 2 full pages on every FCS team. Let me see where that's at. FCS College Football Preview, NFL Digital, Phil Steele Plus. I must be under digital editions. So let's click under digital editions. And there it is, the Phil Steele College Football Preview, Phil Steele FCS magazine right here. 2 full pages, every FCS team. That's where it's located on the store. For some reason, it's not on the front page, just the digital edition. So do keep that in mind if you are looking for it. Oops, wrong one. Let's go over here. The Phil Steele Plus menu. We're going to go to Team Pages, and we're going to put Army back over here. So let's get Army up, and there we go. All right, so like I said, I thought Army played a decent game last week. Kansas State had that game against Ireland. Now, when I talked to Coach Brent Key at Georgia Tech and went over last year with him, he said that the game that really affected him from the trip to Ireland was 2 weeks after. So here you've got they did show some jet lag last week against North Dakota, but now it's a 2 week after when it really affected Georgia Tech last year, and they're having to face the option. So they barely survived last week, got a late touchdown to win 38-35. Once again, if the box score is updated, I'll be able to show you that. They will be updated next week. But of course, I watch each of the games. I do go through the box score of each and every game each week. So now they're laying 17.5 points to Army. If we go back to the schedule predictor, I didn't even put it here, but it does give you a large situation edge on Army this week. So our situational play of the week is we got Army. It's tough to prepare for the option. It's the second week back. And generally, I did this thing, it was about 5 years ago, teams that lost to an FCS team like this, everybody says, oh, they lost to an FCS team, and the number gets inflated. And they're actually, first of all, they probably took the team a little bit lightly. They gave a much better performance. They're embarrassed, and they came back. I think 5 years ago, it had like a 75% record. It's been about 50% the last 4 years, but I actually like to take teams off a loss to an FCS. You get a lot of line value because the average guy in the bar, all they know is, hey, they lost to an FCS team. How can they compete? Army's going to be better than expected. I like Army plus 17.5. So those are your 5 plays. Now let's get to your quick hitters, and then we'll roll into the other one. The first quick hitter we take a look at is UAB against Navy. Now this is not a Phil Steele Plus play, but it is a tricky play, and I'll explain it to you. I can't really show you much on Phil Steele Plus. If I showed you something on Phil Steele Plus, you'd probably be like, oh, I like Navy, because Navy has dominated them. But the last 2 years, UAB's defensive coordinator was basically a high school coach who was hired as a defensive coordinator and really didn't know how to defend the option. And if you look how Navy did, they won 31-6, and last year they won 41-18. 2 big, easy wins over UAB. So you would assume that this year Navy's just going to walk all over UAB, right? Well, 2 things here. And I can show you something on Phil Steele Plus. I made a mistake there. There is something I want to show you on Phil Steele Plus, which helps our game here. But the one thing that I can't show you is that the defensive coordinator for UAB is Steve Russ. Steve Russ spent 6 years at Air Force. This guy knows the option inside and out. He'll have a great game plan for it. So I think our defensive coordinator much better prepared for the option. Now, on the flip side of the coin, since Navy runs the option, they rarely take on a good pass attack. And I want to show you something. When you click here on the last 40 years results, you not only get every line in every game since 1976. You've got, what is that, 10, 20, 30, 40, 49 years of logs. I thought it was over 50 personally, but it's 49 years of logs all the way back to 1976. And it gives you not only the spread on the game, bold means that they won the game outright. The win-loss over here means if they covered the game, and then it gives you the total. Totals didn't really start. I'll show you this real quick. I show you this every week, but I do want to remind you, some of you may not realize this, totals didn't start till 2003. They didn't put totals on every game. They had a couple games totals in 2001, 2002. Total started here. And then when we started charting halftimes, which I find extremely valuable, we've got the halftime scores in here. It looks like we started putting them in 2004, and that tells you a lot about the game. You see the halftime line over here? So you find out what the score was at the half of these games. But the one thing down here I want to point out, we give you the complete statistical notebook since 1986. Look at Navy's pass defense. I always mention that they struggle against the pass because they don't face a good pass attack in practice. 109, 74, 108, 100, 115, 120, 100, 104. You see that, right? Well, let's take a look at UAB. They got a pretty good quarterback. And when I talked to Coach Dilfer, he had told me he feels Jalen Kitten is an NFL prospect. He's hitting 78%, 2-0 ratio. So you've got the matchup. This is a great matchup game and a tricky one. I'm going to call it the tricky play of the week. We're going to take UAB plus 21.5 against Navy. All right, let's get to your series play here. We're going to go Iowa, Iowa State. Now, this one narrowly lost last year. I believe I used it on the tour, and it narrowly lost last year. But I'm going to use it on the tour again. I got no reason not to. Iowa is playing Iowa State. Now, when these two meet, I put the home team on the wrong side there, but we're just going to click on the last 28 years matchups. When you look here, you could see the over-under. Look at this. Under. It's a tight game. It's a big rivalry. I remember when Ohio State and Michigan used to play every year in that 10-year rivalry war. It was always a tight, low-scoring game because you didn't want to make a mistake. You know the team that's going to make a mistake is going to lose. And what's happened is 17-3 to the under in this series. So it's a lot of unders. Last year, the total was 36, and a late touchdown put it over at 39. But that's the only over recently. I think you've got two really good defenses. Iowa last year actually was not dominant like normal. If you look at Iowa normally, they're number 10 in this category. They're number 4 in this category. Last year, they were only number 40 on defense, holding opponents to 38 yards per game below their average. And this category here takes what the teams have done, like the Illinois or the team, Iowa State as an example. Their average offense when they weren't facing Iowa was 59 yards better. So they averaged 362 yards per game when they weren't facing Iowa. I held them to 59 yards below their average in that respect. But last year, they're only number 40. They're back to being top-notch this year. We don't count the FCS. Right here, these aren't updated yet because you've only had one game. So you can't tell what their season average was not playing them. Iowa State's defense doing well this year as well. They're holding up. They have only allowed 296 yards per game. So we're going to go with the series history here. We're going to go with under 41.5. Total's higher than it was last year. Take under 41.5. But one other thing to point out here: the last 6 times Iowa has traveled to Iowa State, when this is green, that means they won the game straight up. When this is green, that means they covered. So you don't have to do the math. You don't have to figure, okay, minus 3.5. They lost by 3. You don't have to do any of that. You just look at the color. The color tells you whether they covered or not. Iowa at Iowa State, won and covered. Did not cover as a 1.5-point favorite, but won the game outright. They've won the last 6 trips to Ames. You could tell that at your fingertips looking at this last 20 years matchup. This gives you the yards in each game. As you can see, look at this. Iowa, 173, 150, 235, 303, 313, 271. They haven't topped 313 yards the last 6 years in this rivalry. And only once has Iowa State got there with 418 here. So you could tell it's a defensive struggle. We're going to go with under 41.5 in Iowa State. All right, now Texas last week lost to Ohio State. One thing we did put up on the Phil Steele Plus menu here, and this stuff I think you'll find interesting. Let's go look at the Phil Steele Plus menu. See if we got an AGG. Average game grade rank. I was on Twitter, and somebody said, Phil, why don't you put an average game grade rank up? So I did. I put it up here. This tells you what the strength was for week 1. And look at this. You might be out of your mind. You're like, Texas lost the game to Ohio State. How are they a better AGG than Ohio State is? Well, once again, the AGG not only takes into account the final score of the game, it takes into account where it was. Keep in mind, Texas was at Ohio State, so Ohio State should have been better than Texas being at home. And then it takes into account the yardage in the game. So let's take a look at the yardage in this game. And we're going to go to Texas on the right. And by the way, they are playing. Texas is playing San Jose State. And we'll put San Jose State out of the Mountain West on the left. All right. Texas had a 336 to 203 yard edge. They held Ohio State 203 yards, 16-11. They got stopped on downs, intercepted. They were -1 in turnovers. They did lose the game 14-7, but overall, that's a good performance on the road to outgain a team that's number 1 in the country right now by 133 yards on the road. That's a good game grade, not just the final score. That's the beauty of the average game grade. It takes everything into account. So that was a really good performance by Texas last week, despite the final score. Now, San Jose was disappointing. They only played to a 92 game grade. They were supposed to beat Central Michigan at home. They did have a slight yardage edge. They did miss 2 field goals at the end of the game, which could have gotten them the win, but they lost. So now we're going to take a look at Arch Manning. Now, Arch Manning, that was his first road start. I will always say this. Young quarterbacks, first road start, young offensive lines, first road start, they're going to struggle. And Texas had both. They only had one starter back on the offensive line, Arch Manning. But last year at home, here's what I want to show you. And once again, you can go into the individual stat leaders, and you can see that Arch Manning played against UTSA, UAB, and Mississippi State at home and put up pretty good numbers. It's much easier to play at home than it is on the road. Look what the scores were of these games last year. You got 56-7 against a group of 5 team, 51-3 against a group of 5 team. Those are Arch Manning games, and they dominated both games. Now they're playing a group of 5 team in San Jose that struggled last week. San Jose needs to get a win here against Idaho. I don't know how much you put into here. You don't want to get beat up. And, of course, the big factor, Texas off a loss. We're going to take Texas, minus 36.5. It's a back-in-their-wheelhouse game here in the fact that Arch Manning's back in his comfort zone, back at home, and that's what would put the points on the board. And after a disappointing 7-point performance last week, I think they do that this week. All right, let's get to your next game, and we're going to put Wisconsin is playing. Let's go get Wisconsin from the Big Ten, and they are taking on Middle Tennessee State from CUSA. Now, generally, I like to play teams that are off a loss to an FCS school, but Middle really struggled. They lost 34-14. They had 153 yards and 13 first downs, got outgained by 190 yards. They didn't have a chance to win that game. Austin Peay beat them, and we picked Austin Peay 6th in their division this year. So they're a team that's middle of the road in their division, and Middle really struggled. Wisconsin, meanwhile, played a really probably should have covered the game against Miami. They had a 353 to 117-yard edge. I love the way their defense is playing. You know, Coach Fickle has told me that they got bigger, stronger at the defensive line. And look at that. They're taking on an offense that only put up 153 yards at home against an FCS school. Probably another shutout on the way here. And I like the way they ran the ball. Now, they did lose Billy Edwards at the start of the game, but Danny O'Neal was the starting quarterback at San Diego State and did okay, and now they'll have a full week to prep for it. So that's a nice advantage. But the kicker here, we take a look at the individual game grades and go to the schedule predictor for this. Wisconsin by 40, and the line is 28.5. You got Wisconsin by 66.8 for the average game grades. 35.4 here. So that's a 3 best bet on Wisconsin. But once again, 66.8. That's the largest difference of the week. It is my average game grade play of the week. And once again, here under average game grades, they are 80 and 49 over the last 3 years. 80 and 49. These are your best bets in just this category this week. Now, I'm not going to give you Hawaii on the tour because their quarterback, Alihado, is banged up, but there are a couple of good things I liked about Hawaii this week. Probably would have used them. They're only 8. I had them a 17-point favorite at the start, but find out if their quarterback can play. Alihado is banged up. Got injured in the opener against Stanford, got injured in the third quarter last week. He is a key to their offense, but Hawaii should be able to win that game comfortably at home if they have him. So your play here, it's your AGG game of the week, 80 and 49 on the schedule predictor, and all the records updated weekly. These are your records in each for the best bets. The ones in green is Wisconsin, which AGG says by 66. All right, let's get to a quick hitter totals play this week. We had a quick hitter totals play last week, won pretty comfortably. Then it was Ohio State and Texas to go under the total. Let's take a look at your quick hitter totals play this week. Arkansas State is taking on Arkansas. And here's what I like about this game. We're going to put Arkansas over here. Arkansas at the half last week, 336 yards, 31 points. If you take a look at their box, you see that Arkansas in the second half, let's go take a look at that. Right here you can look, that's Alabama A&M. Touchdown, field goal, touchdown, 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 touchdown. This is Bobby Petrino. This is Taylon Green. And then what happened? Right here. They scored right at the start of the fourth quarter. And then after that, they just played their backups, punted 3 times, put the offense away. They could easily probably have scored 2 to 3 more touchdowns had they been trying at the end of the game. So 52, they could have scored more. Then you look at Arkansas State. Now, my intel on Arkansas State coming in the year is they've got the skill players. They've got Jalen Raynor back from last year. They've got Corey Rucker back from last year. They've got, Jaquez Cross back from last year. So they've got one of their top rushers, top quarterback, top receiver. They're going to have a potent offense. Defensively, they lost all 11 starters off the defense, guys. Now, they only played Southeast Missouri State last week, but I think their defense could be exposed by Bobby Petrino and company. But on the flip side of the coin, this is a good offense. They put up 492 yards last week. They got Rayner back. They got Rucker back. And I think when you look at Arkansas State, they're going to put some points on the board. The total is 62.5. Hell, Arkansas can get near that. They're taking on a defense that has 0 returning starters, and they had 52 points last week. Could have scored in the 60s. They may get close to the 60 number themselves. You know Arkansas State's going to score, and I didn't put it here, but Arkansas State actually scored a late touchdown against Southeast Missouri State, so they're going to keep playing the full 60 minutes. I like over 62.5 in the Arkansas State-Arkansas game. Okay, one final game to take a look at. It is a Friday game, your final quick hitter for the week, and we're going to take a look at Maryland against Northern Illinois. And I'm going to put Maryland on the right here, and we're going to put Northern Illinois on the left. This is not a play against Northern Illinois. I know last week Northern Illinois struggled against Holy Cross, only won the game by 2. But it's a play on Maryland in non-conference games. Look at this. In non-conference against Group of 5, Coach Loxley likes to roll it up. 50-7, 38-20, 38-6, 38-20, 56-21, 31-10, 62-0, 37-16, and they didn't play in non-conference games there. In 20, 79 against Howard, 63 against Syracuse. They like to put the points up in these games. They've got a dynamic quarterback in Malik Washington. And once again, last week, they delivered a press box winner for me in their easy win over FAU, 39-7. You know, Malik Washington actually started like 3 of 11, then really came on down the stretch. Now that offense should be cooking. He likes to put points on the board. They're coming off a losing season where he says he lost the locker room. I think that they put their points on the board here. I'm going to take Maryland minus 17.5. And if you take a look at the non-conference record, non-conference, 3-0, 7-0, 11-0, 15-0, 16-0 in non-conference games, 26-6 overall. They do their business in these non-conference games, 7-1, 9-3, 11-4 against the spread, 13-5, 15-6, 17-7. In non-conference games since 2017. So you can like all that. I'm going to take Maryland minus the 17.5 over Northern Illinois. And finally, an NFL play. Our NFL guy, Craig, has come up with a play this week. We'll see how he does this year. He's right in the NFL press box and should do a great job with it. He actually went with, he likes the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the thing he wants to show you here, we take Pittsburgh and we're going to take the Jets. Sorry, I put them on the wrong side. But if you take a look at Pittsburgh in season openers, they beat Atlanta 18-10. That's good. They did lose to Fresno. That's 1 loss. But they beat Cincinnati on the road by 3, and they're only laying 2.5 here against the Jets. And Cincinnati was a really good team. And now they beat Buffalo 23-16 on the road. That's a good win. They beat the Giants on the road 26-16. Now we take a look at the Jets. They lost to Fresno in their opener. They did beat Buffalo, but they only had 289 yards. They were outgained for the game, so there's a lot of red over here. They lost to Baltimore by 15. They lost to Carolina by 5. They lost to Buffalo by 10. They lost to Buffalo by 1. So they struggle in opening games of the season. So you got a good first game of the season team. And the one thing about Pittsburgh, they're very consistent. They make the playoffs. They don't win playoff games. Coach Tomlin has done a great job getting them to a winning record each and every year. First game is usually in his wheelhouse. And they, of course, got the quarterback on their side. Aaron Rodgers, who completed 63% last year, is their quarterback, and he's over here. And that's a nice advantage to have. So Craig's play is Pittsburgh minus 2.5 over the Jets. Well, I got a lot of action today, a lot to talk about. Don't forget that special I showed you. And I'd like to take this time to thank you for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour with me. I'll be back tomorrow, or not tomorrow. Yeah, make sure you stay tuned tomorrow. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the alert button as well, because tomorrow Chris is going to come up with some FCS plays. You know how they did last year. I'll have those up for you tomorrow or very early Saturday morning. And thanks for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour with selections.